Welcome to this week's Love Tower chat. What are we chatting about this week?
Talking about that book me and you've been hitting back and forth here. I mean, I kind of read it off and on and then just recently picked it back up maybe a month or so ago, was Outwitting the Devil. Oh, that's a
Uh,
good one to get into, kind of habits, importance of them. Do our habits control us, or do we control our habits, kind of thing?
yeah, dude, I love that book actually. It's an interesting book. I don't know where I first heard it, but I think through a friend. Yeah, but it's some powerful stuff in that book, and the way it frames everything, and just how it gets your mind to kind of like flip and think about, man, why do I do that? Like I know for me, like I'm kind of a procrastinator about certain things. So it actually talks about that in the book. So I was just like, what?
Very interesting how it's like the devil controlling people, not through force or through evil, but just that concept of drifting. And
Yeah,
how that's a it's a subtle way, but it makes sense when you really sit and think of it. Or just fear in general being the main tool, that'll kind of control people.
yeah.
It's pretty wild. I was surprised to hear, wasn't that book like banned originally? I just
I
recently
think,
read.
yeah, I think like for whatever reason, like they didn't release it for like years until I think after his death. Like I think he said something about it would be too like too catastrophic or something like that if they released it too early. I was like,
Pretty wild. I imagine it's some influence from, like, it's got to be like a church influence or something back in the day. Like,
yeah,
why else would they ban that? But yeah, that's interesting.
yeah, because he I guess he makes a lot of references, like he's kind of like invoking the devil. But a friend told me something really interesting about that. He was telling me that how in the book he basically does like some kind of thing where he summons the devil and then he takes control to be able to command him to tell him the truth, right?
Yeah.
And so my friend was telling me he was like, there's actual like occult rituals where they'll summon like certain beings or entities and then force them to kind of tell them like certain knowledge or reveal to them or do certain things for them.
Wow.
And I was like, what?
That's surprising, especially when you assume, entities, beings, anything that you can channel kind of has a higher power above you. But the fact that you can kind of call them out and tell them, make them tell you things is pretty.
He was telling me it was like it's a dangerous like dangerous thing, but yeah, there are like things that people do to do things like that. So kind of some people's like speculation is was he just making this up in terms of just being like imaginative way to convey, what he was trying to say, or did he actually do some kind of invocation to some being and force it to tell him
That's interesting.
uh,
Almost like a channeling of some sorts, or
yeah,
that's pretty crazy. I like the whole concept of it, of how people basically react to things as opposed to, I forgot how I phrased it in the book, but the idea that the one way to go against it was kind of like critical thought or definitive of purpose. That's how I phrased it.
yeah,
Right? And I think when that part hit me the hardest in the book, of like, damn, you really, once you have the mindfulness to see, like, there's so many things in your day-to-day rituals and things that you do that you're really unconscious about. You're almost just in autopilot, from how
yeah,
you wake up, if you're on your phone, whatever, certain things, all that just cause you to keep you tamed, and you're not really definitive in what your goal is and you're trying to do. That's
yeah. So it keeps
pretty,
you kind of lost in terms of like, so the book, it kind of explains how the devil uses his weapons or his tools to keep you from your goals, keep you from your dreams, keep you from accomplishing success and all the goals that you have in life. And so I think one of those things is like yeah, just kind of like making you drift so you don't know your purpose. And then what are some of the other tools that he was saying in there? I
I
think.
remember the fears, the six fears: poverty, criticism,
Yeah.
your health, all of the fear of death,
Oh,
love. Those are interesting. I think fear in general, you see that. I loved how when they talk about how schools kind of unintentionally produce, or education system unintentionally produces drifters, which
yeah.
makes sense because it's kind of like you're not really critically thinking. You're kind of just absorbing, regurgitating information, your obedience in school, and then even most jobs are kind of like that too. You're like subservient to your employer because
Uh,
that's like security, it keeps you in check. Like, which goes back to the fear thing, is like, oh, your fear of financial instability. What are you going to do? How are you going to provide for your kids, your wife, whatever?
yeah.
So
Teaching you
that
kind of conformity.
right. And I think the concept that society kind of shapes this too is like, I remember Rogan was talking about it. I don't know who he had on, but that nowadays most media, like, the biggest influence today is that everything's trying to get your attention. It's a competition for your attention, which is
Yeah.
like kind of exacerbating drifting, from like,
Yeah.
it's no longer propaganda in forms of like pamphlets and stuff. It's like algorithms and what your interests are getting collected, and they're valuable information. So all of these companies are trying to pull you in one direction or another.
You think about it, it it's not getting easier. I mean, he wrote that book. I think it was like over 50 years. I forgot the exact date, but it was a long time ago. Uh,
Right.
but you think about it, it's not getting better. It's getting worse because we have so many channels of distraction. We got internet. We got all these different social media sites, and then we have the algorithms that are tailored to exactly our beliefs and certain things that we want or desire. So it's a really strong pull in that direction to where it's so easy nowadays to drift more than even the time when he was in.
For sure. Big time. I mean, it's crazy to think just what the social media and what technology's done to people's attention spans, your daily habits, how much they're influenced now, what you're doing on your phone, and all of that stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Uh, it's crazy to me that, if you think about it, it's like we do have a society, I think nowadays that it's more, I think we conform more now than ever. Because if you look at it, like you look at certain things that's happening, like I always wonder, like how can a nation or a population kind of be controlled by a certain like a few people in power who where most of the population disagrees with like the direction that things are going. Let's say, for example, like even this war with Iran. I would say the majority of people probably, disagree. Just of what I've seen, online or different polls that I've seen. Like the majority of Americans disagree with them. But
Yeah.
yet we still find ourselves moving in that direction. I think
Right.
if the population was less drifty, it's like in their day-to-day lives, like there would be more uproar. There would be like the people in power would fear the people more. Like,
Right.
we can't do this. There may be an uprising on our
It's true. I think that definitiveness of purpose kind of concept seems like most people fall victim to. I mean, he says that in the book too, which is interesting. I think he literally says like 98% of people are drifters. Like the
Yeah,
vast majority of people are not consciously kind of being definitive in what they want. They're just reactionary. Wake up, you complain about the same things, you go to work, you doom scroll, and it's like
yeah,
rinse, repeat. 10 years go by and it's like, what did you do? What did you accomplish? I think that on a larger scale, interesting is a connection to this guy. You know who Yuri Bezmenov is? Joe
no,
Rogan brought him up. He's like a KGB informant, or I forget what they frame him as. He was like a propagandist. that he came out years back, I think in the 80s, I could be wrong, but he's known for these lectures talking about kind of this influence that governments could do to destabilize competing nations. Like what you could do to destabilize nations without a use of force. So without military and stuff. And it would be like four stages of subversion. You have you demoralize people by like altering their values through culture and media, stuff like that. And then you kind of destabilize them by creating a division. You weaken the systems, and then major crises will occur. And like an example being like COVID, you saw how quick people kind of conformed. They went in their own camps. It was like very politicized. You were either
Yeah.
like the vaccine, wear the mask, or you're like selfish and you don't care. Like very left versus right, but pretty interesting crossover of how on like the small level of outwitting the devil, you see that like your own habits on a micro level will influence you, but like you can influence entire nations by altering their moral structure, creating crises, which is just fear. It's like the same concept, invoking large scale fear, and then eventually it's normalization. Now no one even questions it. It's just like the new
Yeah.
normal.
Dude, I think a lot that makes a lot of sense actually. If you think about it, I see a lot of that happening right now. Like I think, have you ever heard of Carl Jung?
Of course.
Yeah, he talks about that too. He talks about how as we move into this this time period is that there will be kind of like a moral degradation of people's morals. He predicted that. And I see that you see that kind of happening in society, and I think in the United States, if you think about it, most of the other nations wouldn't attack the United States in terms of like militarily or anything. They would probably attack it in that way that you're saying, where it's kind of like let's influence them, you know, through other means rather than direct conflict. So we
Right.
can kind of degrade them from the inside out. That makes a lot of sense.
It's like playing the long game because Yuri Bezmenov talks on it of how this is like a decades long span, like 10 to
Mm.
15 years of just slowly demoralizing a population. And then
Yeah,
eventually it destabilizes them. They put into different camps. You kind of bid them against each other. It's like the classic play out. The way you described in these lectures, I think now are so relevant because it's exactly what you see is happening in America, at least, namely. You
yeah,
know, it's black versus white, it's right versus left. It's all this like controlled opposition to keep people, biting at each other's ankles so that they don't look to our own government and be like, what are we doing in Iran? Why are we doing
yeah,
X, Y, Z? Why are we
yeah.
deporting the people, that we care
That's the
about?
truth. That's the truth, bro. It's like I always think that it's like why is it that you think about it like right and left, or you think, so much racial conflict and all these different like conflicts in the United States. But really, you think about it, the true, in my eyes, I've always thought this is like the true are at the top. The people who you should be worried about are at the top. Like one
Yeah.
example of this, not to get political, but one example of this that trips me out sometimes is I always look and I'll be like, have you always heard like kind of like people will be like, man, these like welfare people like people shouldn't get welfare or things like this because they're taken from the system. Like, but people are concerned about this like this welfare, this person getting like their $600 check a month, they're taken from the system, but yet you have these corporations and these politicians who take hundreds of millions, and you have these like corporate back backdoor deals where they're doing like stealing millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Have you ever heard that thing where the Pentagon hasn't been able to to balance their budget in like years? They've lost like trillions and trillions of dollars. No
Right.
explanation as to where it goes. But then you have so many people, like I've seen so many people so passionate about the welfare mom who gets $600 a month for her check. It's kind of like the stupidest thing. It's like, hey, look at those people while we steal all your money right here.
Right. That's so true. I think that's definitely a tactic, is deflecting like that. But yeah, on the low scale, that's crazy. Like $2.3 trillion unaccounted for right before 9/11 occurred, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
boom, the Pentagon gets hit. Right.
yeah,
It's like, come on, dude. I don't know. There's so many events now in history you can look at. We've been we're all getting played. It's sad to see, people getting at each other's throats, blaming, the guy collecting the welfare check. When I think what, like Yuri's saying, is we're already at that phase of normalization. We went through the three other phases, across these 20, 30, 50 years now.
yeah,
It's so normalized that less and less people are looking at the major corporations and the real ones that are kind of controlling the narratives.
yeah,
It's easy to fall down the conspiratorial traps with it, but just from a logic, like without any emotion or any wacky tinfoil stuff, it's like you can just step back and look. Like, it's no mystery that there's it's like five major companies that influence everyone's day-to-day lives, in a
yeah,
sense, from major media conglomerates, all this stuff. It's not a single entity. But it is for sure a small number, relatively, group of people that hold the true power.
yeah. I seen a video clip online one time where they were showing like this news station, and the reporter, I forgot exactly what they were talking about. The reporter was repeating like some line from the news, and then it zoomed out and it showed a different station, different channel, where they were saying the exact same line, and then it kept
Yeah,
zooming out, and then there was like hundreds of different stations saying repeating the same exact line, and it was just like, what is going on here? They're
yeah,
literally saying it to the exact T. I was just like, what the heck is going on?
yeah. Consolidation of power and information. Like, who's controlling the narrative?
Yeah,
I think the idea being too is like, do people choose their beliefs, or do they kind of inherit them?
mm,
How often, when it comes back to like the outwitting the devil thing, is the concept of drifting, and people, like, when you're on autopilot, it's like, are you actually doing your own thinking, or have we outsourced that to a degree where you're just kind
yeah,
of reacting to other pieces of information? You're not really
yeah.
forming your own opinion on things anymore.
Yeah, it's all being projected at you actually. And then
Right.
the conflict is so strong that it almost, you think about it as like when you create a conflict, it's so strong and so polarizing. It almost just pulls everyone. Like unless you're like kind of like what he's saying in Outwitting the Devil, you're really like the 2% who are really thinking for themselves and really analyzing the situation and not reacting. Like unless you're doing that, you're probably gonna get pulled into like one side or the other.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's like whoever controls your attention kind of shapes your habits, in a sense. And then your habits, basically, that's your reality. That's what shapes your life. So you see that from the top down, the influence of all of that. People not thinking for themselves. That was the main thing I think I pulled out of that book, was just like, damn,
Yeah,
where am I going on autopilot, and like not really thinking for myself and having like my own thoughts. It's more so just like other people's opinions, what you think makes sense, like what camps you fall in here or there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's
one of the things that got me from the book is like I notice like I do this sometimes. One of the tools he said like the devil uses is like procrastination, like to get you to procrastinate. And I know I was like, man, like I do that sometimes. Procrastinate. I remember even when I was in school, like I would wait to do assignments until like, literally the very last minute. And I was just like, man, that you think about it because it's like for whatever reason, procrastination is, especially if you want to hit a goal or you're trying to reach something, that's such a really powerful I could see that as being, in the way he's framing it, like a very powerful tool for negative influences to really slow you down.
For sure.
Uh,
Yeah, there's almost a weird when you see people that are like perpetually late for things. They have bad time management. It's to me, I don't know why it just rings in now as you're saying. That's almost like a concept of procrastination where there might be like a subconscious addiction to that, that you're
yeah,
kind of so accustomed to like the last minute rush. Because it
yeah,
almost feels like you accomplished something when you won one over on someone. You're like, man, I got this big assignment, and then you had months to do it, and then like 2 days before you cram it, and if it works, you're kind of like, oh man, I got that. And
that's
it's
crazy.
almost the same with like you see people that are perpetually late for things. You're like,
Um,
there's a weird addiction there. I don't believe that people lose control over that. I think it's like
yeah,
you're kind of passively so accustomed to doing that that you grew. It's like the same thing of people that are addicted to drama, but they
yeah.
act like they hate the drama, but they kind of like attract it.
Like it subconsciously, like, oh man,
Right.
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, I love that book. It's like it makes you really think, like, what does it really take for me to reach the goals and the things that I really want in life? I think that's what he really intends the book to be. It's like for you to, you ever seen the scene in The Matrix where Neo kind of starts to be able to dodge the agents? They're shooting
Mhm.
the bullets at him and he's picking them out of the air. It's almost like that. Like when you read the book, you feel like, oh, like more clearly, like I see the negative influences, whether it's the devil or however you want to perceive it, but I see the negative influences more clearly, and it's clearly defining how to kind of mitigate or sidestep those.
Right. It's like all rooted in kind of mindfulness of it starts with that awareness of it and
Yeah.
then just keeping that in your forefront. Like when you can catch yourself drifting. I remember after reading the book I'd be like, oh shit, I'm drifting. Like I would just like fall into a mode and be like, oh, I'm gonna play a phone game or I'm just like
Um,
scrolling, chilling. I'm like, man, there's so much more useful things you could be doing, but it's a balance of anything. I don't think it's not bad if you're going to enjoy, watching some YouTube videos here and there or whatever you're going to do. I think you can set up a mental structure, or what I've been trying to do lately is be like, oh man, I'm going to try and get the things done that I need to do so that I can chill out and like doom scroll for 20 minutes or watch something interesting on YouTube, because it almost gives you that low level of anxiety when you know you have shit to do, but you're
and,
just like, I don't want to do it. And you're like doing whatever else. And then it lingers there. It's so much
you know,
easier to just get done what you need to do.
it was someone who said, I forgot who said this, but they were saying you only will feel stress about things when you when you lack when you lack taking the action to get them done. It's something to that effect where it's like you won't feel the stress of something that you're actively addressing with action.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
only
sense.
yeah, it's only when you're not acting upon the thing that's stressing your mind out that it creates the stress in.
All right.
And
Uh,
when I heard that, I was like, what? I was like, dude, that makes sense. I was like, when I think about it, most of the things that I'm really like weighing on my mind are usually things that I haven't acted upon yet.
all right.
That I know needs to be acted upon.
Yeah. And then you can feel yourself like it's like a weight off your shoulders when you just start the thing that you've been like dreading doing. And then
Yeah.
as you accomplish it, you're kind of like, oh man, like I did what I had to do. They're no longer
Exactly.
for it. I think, man, what is that quote? None are more hopelessly enslaved than those that are falsely believed to be free. Kind of like basically like the strongest prison is the one where the prisoner thinks he's free, basically, that he's not
Yeah.
in prison. And I think that's kind of what people slip into, the whole idea of like ignorance is bliss is this book almost screws that up for people because once you're aware of it, you can't not be aware of it. When you realize you're drifting and you like can categorize that in your mind, like, oh man, I'm screwing off right now. I'm not doing anything. But if you're not thinking like that, then
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
people get
that's true actually. It's almost like it wakes you up from the Matrix almost.
right.
Like you can see the Matrix after you read the book, you're just like, okay, like I see it here.
See that control structures. Fear alone, I think, is a really big one. I remember being a kid and realizing like, man, why am I so afraid to do like certain things? Or I would be like a worry wart, about someone I really cared about, like dying. Or I really didn't want to be near like on high structures. I was like, where
Yeah.
are these kind of coming from? And I'm like, these are all kind of rooted in fear of death. So like that being a big hump of just getting over that is when you can address where those areas in your life that you're like, its root core is so simple. It's like a fear of either you dying or a fear of
Mm,
someone you love dying. And I think
right.
that's a big
That's a
control
big
mechanism. Fear of getting old, all the things he talks
yeah.
about in the book that are fear of judgment, fear of criticism. It's
Yeah.
all types of fears that kind of shape you in your actions.
Yeah. One of the my favorite lines in that book is where he says, nature will not tolerate idleness mentally or physically. And I
Oh,
was like, oh, I was like, dude, that's powerful. Because if you think about it, that's true, actually. Like if you can't even like your physical body will degrade if you idle too long. Or
right,
your mind will degrade if it idles too long. So it's kind of like you need to always be pushing towards something. Or it's like that saying like people say if you're not growing, you're kind of like declining. If
right,
you're not pushing, you're falling back.
right.
It's powerful.
Now it's like sedentary lifestyles are basically, commonplace. It's the new normalization.
Yeah.
Not for everyone, obviously, but the concept of you sit at home all day, at least in the American kind of culture, probably not the same in other places, but you're usually sedentary. You go to your desk job, you sit all day, you sit in your car to commute to go home, to then you sit on your couch. You know what I mean? I
It's
love I
crazy.
love the concept of, and I think it was probably again Rogan that mentioned it, but like pushing yourself to do one uncomfortable thing a day, whether that's like the gym or something that keeps you where you're like, you don't want to do it, but you kind of force yourself. There's something that I think the study was it proves for better longevity or more, you'll live longer if you can accomplish regularly pushing yourself to do things that you don't want to do
Mm,
and not
that's
just
it.
choosing like the path of comfort, because that's kind of
Yeah.
its own, that's drifting in its own way when you just
Yeah.
take the comfort paths.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's almost like even down to the muscle itself that it has to be it has to be brought stronger through resistance.
Right.
It's powerful.
Don't use it, you lose it concept.
Yeah, yeah, I love that book. I feel like, man, we should always review that book like once a month. Actually, it's so good.
Right. It's just a good thing to keep in your mental so you can catch it more often.
Yeah, because every time I read it, I feel like it renews the clarity, gives you that Neo in the Matrix feeling every time.
Right. That's true.
Got the key. I got the key to the Matrix over here.
Oh yeah, man.
Oh, cool.
I got nothing else. Yeah,
No, good chat. Good chat. Good chatting with you.
me too, man.
Good week. Good week. We'll still be doing these chats each week. Wednesday, same time, 6 p.m. So if you guys want to join us, click the link in the bio. We'll also be doing some meditations throughout the month as well, some group meditations. Awesome. Thank you for joining this week again, having some good conversations with you, Kelly.
Always, man. Looking forward to the next one.
Awesome, awesome. All right, brother.
All right, bro.
See you
Love you,
next time.
man.
Love you.
Peace.